Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. It's so lovely to see you again, Marina.
It is lovely to see you, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad. I'm getting very nervous about our Albert Hall show.
Nervous but excited?
Well,
The anxiety dream?
Neither of us are natural performers. We are surrounding ourselves with natural performers. I'll say that. Lots of fun celebrity guests.
I'm going to wear a big dress.
Yeah,
I think that helps.
Yeah.
And a large number of pieces of Christmas paraphernalia.
Oh, are you? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll wear a Christmas jumper. We got an amazing band, the Sensation Band, who played at my wedding, who were like, they are the best band I've ever seen in my entire life, if you're looking to book a band. So there's going to be lots of Christmas songs. But yeah, I'm terrified. But should we not worry about it too much?
No, it's going to be really fun. It's a celebration. It's fun. It is going to be a party. And it's going to mark the official opening of the Christmas season. I'm just agreeing that.
Everyone knows each year that Christmas starts when the Rest is Entertainment live show happens. 4th of December. Enough of that. What are we talking about this week?
We are going to talk about the possibility of the emergence of a kind of celebrity politician in our country. Whether someone like Jeremy Clarkson has the potential to kind of find a way through.
I mean, if I was going to clickbait it, I'd say we're going to ask the question, could Jeremy Clarkson be Prime Minister?
Yeah, and you have just done that, so thank you very much for that. What else are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about the Jaguar rebrand and whether a lot of people have said it's the worst rebrand in history. So we're going to talk about what happens when a brand collapses, or perhaps Jaguar are being cleverer than everyone else. We shall find out. And then I'm also going to talk about quiz shows, which are the great new heroes of British television. And I'll say why and what might happen next with them as well. So
I
quiz
am
shows,
going to listen to that conversation
Yes.
and interject occasionally.
Exactly that. Celebrity prime ministers.
Last week, the Farmers' March on Whitehall to protest about the changes in inheritance tax to farms. Jeremy Clarkson appeared at that march. It was interesting. I suppose that's probably the hook on which we're hanging this.
Because in America, of course, they have a celebrity president.
Yeah.
That is a president who was not a politician, was known to the public, and used that public leverage to become president, to run for president and to become president. So they have a definitive celebrity president. So Reagan, you could say, was a celebrity president, less so because he'd been slightly more of a party animal, by which I mean someone who is interested in the party rather than a party animal.
Drag at parties, I hear.
He's not Leonardo DiCaprio. But Trump is an actual celebrity, became president. As you say, harder in the UK, although I'll talk about various reasons why I think it's possible now. But the question is, could it happen in Britain? And if it did, who would it be with? And Clarkson, as you say, at that Farmers' March, various people started thinking, wow, a lot of people seem to like him.
One of the people who sort of said, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about this, is a guy who I've been talking to this week who is so interesting. He's called James Kanagasoriam, who is brilliant. He's the chief research officer at Focal Data, and he coined the phrase that he's a pollster. He coined the phrase the red wall.
That was my decorator.
Yeah. Sorry, it's not going down in the history books as
it used to be called a signature wall.
A feature wall.
Feature wall, there you go, feature wall.
Yeah, that feature wall of British politics. He's also come up recently with a way of describing Keir Starmer's kind of landslide coalition as the sandcastle coalition. It's kind of very wide, but it's very shallow and it could easily be washed away.
And it's got a flag on top of it.
Yeah, and it's got a little flag on top of it. And I was talking to him about celebrity politicians in general and Clarkson in particular. And he pointed out that one of the really interesting things is that because of all the kind of convulsions and political turnover we've had since 2016 onwards, our political cycles have gone miles faster than our celebrity cycles. So we've torn through like tons of politicians. And broadly speaking, in kind of middle of the road terms, the celebrities are the same. Okay, so we've got the same presenters, the same sort of rockers, the same stars. So the celebrities have had more staying power than the politicians. Which
are you saying that celebrities have more staying power than Liz Truss?
Yeah. Unbelievably, people have been famous for longer than Liz Truss.
Yeah, I've done pilots that have gone on longer than Liz Truss's premiership. Can I throw a couple of other names into the mix, though? One who is a celebrity, but one who's a politician becomes celebrity. Gary Lineker.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't want it. He's got a nice life, Gary, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think he would want it to happen.
In the same way as Carol Vorderman, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, but you know what? A Carol Vorderman run for office, though, it would be at least good TV.
It would be fantastically chaotic and I would watch.
Yeah. And Rory Stewart, could he leverage this newfound love that people have for him into running a sort of centre-right coalition?
Well, that's interesting. I'm not quite sure of the way back now.
Back into politics?
Yes.
Yeah.
I suppose that you want to do it outside of the Conservative Party.
The nice thing about having this conversation now, though, is 10 years ago, if we'd been talking about which celebrities wanted to be Prime Minister, the top of the list would have been Noel Edmonds. And now he's over in
I told
New
you,
Zealand.
I think he was prescient with that show, Noel's HQ, that mad show.
He,
We actually should do a special breakout on that show. Can we do one of our special bonus episodes? By the way, if you haven't signed up for our club, we have done special bonus episodes on kind of niche but fascinating topics.
It's a Royal Knockout we've done.
It's a Royal Knockout. The Life and Times of Steven Seagal. Also things like Die Hard, what have you. That is a good one.
No,
Sorry.
I remember
Noel's HQ, and what that show was before its time.
When we were doing Deal or No Deal, they asked him on Question Time, and he was saying, "Do you think I should do it?" And people said, "Well, I suppose if you want to." He said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it because I've decided I'm just going to go on there." And as soon as the first question is asked, David Dimble will say, "What do you think, Noel?" I am going to say, "I'll tell you what I think. I think the time for talking in this country is over and it's time for action. I'm going to rip off my microphone, throw it down and storm out of the studio." And then we were like, "Oh my God, it's so tempting to say, yes, you should do that, Noel, because I'd love to watch it." But it did not happen. That invitation did not come to fruition.
Oh no, that's such a shame. That's such a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I hope you would have pushed him right into doing that.
Oh,
one, it would have gone great for Deal or No Deal ratings. And two, let's see what happens when we throw the cards up like this.
Yes, exactly. You know what? He would have ended up in New Zealand either way, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
I think that's another documentary that's going to be interesting next year.
I'm dying for that. So many people have been thrown on the scrap heap in terms of politics. So it's inevitable that despite the obstacles in our system, celebrities and people who come from outside politics are being considered. And also the fact that people do feel that politics is broken and that despite, sort of landslide victory, it's not immediately clear how that feeling of brokenness is going to change. And people want things to be different.
And in terms of the way our system works, famously, it's been impossible for an outsider to really come in and be prime minister because you had to be leader of the Tory party or the Labour Party, certainly for the last 80 odd years. But as your friend James will attest, the speed of the political cycle means many things, but it means that actually those party loyalties have almost completely disappeared. If you play to your base as a Tory or Labour politician now, that base is very small. And we've seen with UKIP winning the European elections, we've seen with Reform and their vote share in the last election, you can start a brand new party absolutely from scratch and do rather well in Britain, which is not entirely new because the SDP were polling at 50% in the early 80s, but it is sort of new. And I think you could probably start your own political party now, which in 6 months could, be at 25% in the polls.
Whether it can translate into seats is a separate question, but I would say that volatility is now the sort of central feature of our politics. Is that all those things that you win a massive landslide, okay, it's going to take 10 years or whatever, 12 years to overturn. All of that's gone.
All gone.
Anything, not anything can happen, but many more things can happen than used to be able to happen.
Because the one thing people always say, but the thing is, you could be up at that in the polls, but with Reform, it's hard to win the seats in Westminster. It's hard to actually win in a series of constituencies. That is going to go as well. So that's just a thing that we think can't be done. But of course, it can be done because so many people are happy. Well, so many people will gladly gravitate towards something new and shiny and something that seems to solve.
So many people are unhappy is probably the driver of it all.
Exactly, which has been the driver of politics forever. But by and large, you then had a binary choice between red and blue. And now, in our world of social media, you have greater choices. So all I'm saying is that opens the door for a celebrity to start their own party and get into power in a way that they haven't been able to do before. But don't forget, Sunak and Starmer were both fairly new MPs when they became leaders of their parties, certainly much quicker than had ever been the case before. And so you could also, if you happen to join the Labour Party or the Conservative Party and be elected, you could become leader of one of those parties fairly quickly in a way you couldn't have done 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Sort of in that way that Boris Johnson, whilst being a creature of politics in lots of ways, was also a sort of outsider figure and then suddenly was kind of surfaced ineluctably to the top.
Yeah, there's a sidebar, which is people might say, but Johnson and Farage are celebrities. I don't think either of them are. Johnson was a journalist and he'd been on one episode of Have I Got News for You? Farage was a trader or something, and he became known through
But let's
politics.
talk about what we're also talking about when we're talking about the subject, which is why people feel that they're not really politicians, is because so much of politics is now vibes-based. We talk about things in terms of personal atmospherics, really.
Yeah.
And so Johnson might seem like not a politician. Farage might seem like not a politician, although, as you say, he has been a politician forever.
Yeah.
And the vibes of Clarkson.
Well, I was going to say, if you're interested in vibes-based, then That's entertainment. That's
Well,
all entertainment
yeah.
is. That's why people become famous. It's Riz. It's being
Yeah.
vibes-based. That's all it is. So those two things are about to collide.
And stories,
I
which we
suspect.
talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And people in politics are always saying, well, people have just failed to tell a story. Clarkson has made, with the farm show, an everyman story out of farming, which you would think would be quite hard to do. And we've talked before about him and his producer, Andy Willman, and there's a sort of story of the week.
Yeah.
Something goes wrong, it's fixed, but there's ongoing kind of series plot lines. But he is able to tell a very compelling story. And it's really interesting. Talking to James Canagasorium, he said what Clarkson can do is he has drawn together different strands of Britishness that elsewhere are completely sort of bifurcated, right? So when you ask kind of young, urban, maybe centre-left professionals, what's the high point of Britishness, they'll say something like, Danny Boyle and the 2012 opening ceremony and blah, blah. And then if you talk about, ask other people, they might say, the people who are drawn to Farage, they talk about a nostalgia, but there's a aversion to loss, and that can feel quite a negative version of Britishness as well. Now, with Clarkson, what he's done is you've got the show, and it is elegiac, and sometimes it's kind of banal, but it's also magnificent and positive and emotional. But the one thing he's got that neither the Danny Boyle nor the sort of Farage vision of Britishness has is that it's got that ironic nature of Britishness. Which is, by the way, such a key part of Britishness, that kind of irony and the sort of humour. Neither of those versions has it, which is, not in any way to denigrate either of those versions. They just don't have it. So when he talked, James was talking about the sort of Notting Hill to Nottinghamshire coalition of people of the centre-right. Now, most politicians would kill for that sweep because people have become either sort of urban politicians or rural politicians. They're not able to be both, which, like it or not, Clarkson is.
Yes, he is. I think that's exactly right. I think it's very, very telling that at a farmers' march, he is asked to speak and not Farage. That tells you everything. Again, Farage, in the world of politics, Farage has charisma. We've talked about this before. In the actual world, he doesn't. If you put Farage up with Jeremy Clarkson, you see who Farage is, which is a poor man's Jeremy Clarkson. Now, the interesting thing about Clarkson, I think if he chose to start his own party, it would be huge trouble for reform, but I think it'd be huge trouble for everybody because I think he's a very popular figure. I don't think he would want to particularly. Clarkson has a lot of what Boris has, which is they are journalists. They are able, on a sixpence, to construct an argument. Whatever argument you want, ask me what you want to do. I can do it, and I can do it in 800 words. I can make it funny. I can make it relatable. I can center myself in it. So he can absolutely do that. The difference, I think, between Clarkson and Boris Johnson is I think Clarkson knows that. I think Clarkson knows he's just a journalist. I think Clarkson understands that. I think Clarkson understands that if you're a journalist, you never have to really face the consequences of what you do. You can say whatever you want and people don't lose their jobs. Whereas Boris Johnson didn't understand that. Boris Johnson thought, no, I can do this and I can take this same energy and I can take this into Westminster. That's why I think that Clarkson wouldn't want to be Prime Minister because I think he wouldn't enjoy the consequences. Anytime he's been called out for his journalism and faced the consequences, I don't think he's enjoyed it particularly.
What I think that Clarkson 2.0, if we can talk about him since Clarkson's Farm, which is a different sort of version of Clarkson, as we've talked about before on the podcast, the reason he might feel of this particular political moment is that he embodies and instinctively understands something that most people understand, which is that being a kind of small c conservative is not the opposite of being left wing. Mm-hmm. Because what has happened over and maybe we've seen the high water mark of it with the Trump election, is that kind of on the sort of hyper engaged left, I would call it, the kind of bundling of beliefs. So if I believe this, I have to believe this, I have to believe that, I have to believe that. And if there's one of the approved set of beliefs you don't believe in, then you've made a mistake because you're not with your cohort at all times. And actually, if you look at how most people are in this country, sorry to say, most people are pro-death penalty and also very, very pro-gay rights. And this is just, things are more complicated than these kind of bundled beliefs would have you believe. And so that's quite so Clarkson can be quite appealingly non-political. He can sort of come through the middle and say, I know that there's a special word I'm supposed to use here that I'm not using. And on the right, they're talking about speaking truth and, that kind of quite sort of almost religious type of populism. He can say, I don't know any about that, but this is what it looks like to me. And he can sort of come through the middle with that.
The plain speaker.
The plain speaker,
I
yes.
don't know about all this Westminster stuff.
Yeah.
And by the way, most Westminster stuff is almost all MPs are just working their socks off for people in their constituencies who have, housing problems. So that's most of what the Westminster stuff is. But it's very, very easy to use the idea of, Westminster stuff as me. I'm just a poor multi-millionaire landowner, so I don't get all your fancy talk. Just to me, common sense is all I'm interested in. It's such an easy playbook. So Trump has done it. It's the simplest thing in the world, but the reason we're talking about it is it works, and also Clarkson is very, very good at it because he is a talented speaker and a talented writer, whatever else you might think of him.
Absolutely, but it would be nice to think that to some extent that rural thing he's begun to embody is something that we could look at across society for the future, because in rural areas you're much more likely to have cross-income relationships. They're far more easy and to indulge in, of course there is massive inequality in the countryside. Of course there is. But it's not so sort of spatial. People do the same things together, even though they might come from massively different sections of society.
Are you getting a lot of this from Rivals?
No, I'm not getting a lot of it from Rivals, although I'm trying to think whether that... I mean,
there's some...
Julie Cooper knows the countryside.
Yeah, of course she does.
But that kind of cross-income relationship, cross-social class relationship happens much more in the countryside than it does where things are far more stratified in urban areas. And Clarkson somehow embodies that. And I went down to the march because I wanted to see what it was like. I never think you get to the farmers' protest.
Yeah.
I never think you get it off the telly what it's actually like. And it was interesting. There was lots of families. There were lots of young people. Yes, it's quite male skewing, but it wasn't totally. And I thought it was a much more different protest than you might have expected. And of course, you can't tell these things from the television. So I thought it's interesting. You were talking a little bit earlier about him sort of not liking getting into trouble for his political positions, but he has taken positions and he's made mistakes and he's up, he's down. And in many ways, he's had a sort of politician's time of it to some extent, but he isn't tainted by what people hate, which is machine politics. So although he has had those things, he's not tainted by that. And that in some ways makes him a sort of credible populist possibility.
Yeah, if I was a British Steve Bannon, say, which, listen, newsflash, I'm not.
Which you so are.
He would be my absolute perfect candidate. Because as you say, he's cross genders, he's cross ages, he's cross classes. There's something he does. He's got that plain speaking thing, truth to power type thing. And we know that being, when Victoria Derbyshire is saying, but you're only a farmer for the tax breaks, you sort of have said that. And he said, well, yeah, but now I'll have to put everything in a trust. And it's not that... It's hard, isn't it, when Victoria Derbyshire says, but you said you're doing it for the tax breaks, because you have to ask that question as a journalist. If you're not asking that question, you're not telling the story, because that is the story. That's why he bought the farm. But equally, his answer, which is, then that balloon has popped immediately. 10 years ago, it'd be a gotcha. Now it's not. So as a journalist, it's very hard when someone like Clarkson comes from outside politics to nail them to the wall for anything.
I agree with that. Having said that, I read what he wrote in the Sunday Times this weekend. He said that there was a sort of tinge of regret to it all. He also said that the farmers had said to him after he'd done his speech, don't represent us anymore on this issue. And I think he regarded the BBC interview as a sort of, that he had been had. Whereas I actually hadn't, from watching it and from being there, I didn't experience it as that. And I was quite surprised he felt the need to walk back a large amount of it, but he clearly did. And it was interesting. There was a bit where he was talking about Andy Willman, the producer of Clarkson's Farm and long-term producer of Clarkson, was there and saying, I don't know, we sort of need an ending, because they're obviously going to do an episode when he goes to the Farmers' March, and that's going to be part of it. And Andy Willman was like, basically, you've got to do the speech because otherwise we haven't really got an ending for this episode. And he sort of made it sound a bit like that. But I was surprised he felt the need to walk it. He clearly felt sensitive about it. He said I was on a lot of high-dose painkillers because he slipped a disc. So I was surprised he had, because I actually felt it was a very successful day's outing for him. And I was also surprised that the farmers had said, we don't want you to represent us, but that you can see that they're thinking, if they're asking Farage not to speak, they're thinking incredibly carefully about their campaign. Yeah. So that's interesting. But to me, I thought, oh gosh, then perhaps there is that sensitivity you were talking about earlier.
Well, I think so. That's it seems like Clarkson is someone who actually rather enjoys his life and has a happy family and people he loves around him and things to do, and he has lots of work that he enjoys doing. I don't know why he would give that up for some sort of personal ego trip. The really interesting thing is, as you say, this whole thing has come to a head because of the speech he made at the Farmers' March, and suddenly this sort of coalition seems to come together. And in the article, it becomes apparent that the speech is the product of Andy Willman, the producer, saying, "I wonder if you could do a speech."
Otherwise, we haven't got an ending.
Otherwise, we haven't got an ending. And so, of course, the natural thing is to say, "Oh, you know what? It was TV. It was artifice." But then you go, "Oh no, but that's how you win elections. That's how you do it."
Kayfabe. It's what Trump's done all the way through.
Exactly. You've got this front man, Jeremy Clarkson, who does it, and then you've got someone like Andy Willman, who knows exactly what people want, how they want it, and he says, "Do a speech now in front of all the farmers." And listen, it's a brilliant way to make a television program, but I'll say it's also a brilliant way to become prime minister of a country. I would say that, and you need your Andy Willman behind you. So Clarkson, I would say, I think there's a route where he could become prime minister now, which didn't exist 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think that if he wanted to do it, it's absolutely possible, as I think he has the personality type, and I think he probably has the coalition. This is depressing some people so much, I know, I'm so sorry. But I promise it's hypothetical at the moment. He absolutely has a coalition of enough people that would vote for him or come behind him. I think that the second a non-politician becomes a politician, it's harder, because actually you can't play the outsider card for too long. You can in America, less so here. I don't think he would want to be prime minister, would be my opinion. But I do think a celebrity could become prime minister. So the question is, if it weren't Clarkson, who might it be?
Martin Lewis.
Well, I was looking at the
moneysavingexpert.com. I've got some views on this.
I was looking at the list of Britain's most popular celebrities on YouGov, which is a really cool list. It's a really, really interesting place to be. And at number one, it's David Attenborough. Okay, he's Britain's most popular celebrity. It's how many people recognise you minus...
He's literally older than Joe Biden.
Yeah, exactly. He's 18 months older than Joe Biden. The popularity is how many people recognise you minus how many people have a negative view of you, and David Attenborough scores sort of 92. And you go, it's got like about 500 names on this list. It's really worth looking at as you get into the 400s. Other people in that top 10, Trevor McDonald's in the top 10, Stephen Fry's in that top 10. Number 2 on that list, number 2 on that entire list of every single celebrity there is Martin Lewis.
Oh, right.
In terms of popularity, good. Everyone knows him, and everyone who knows him likes him.
Well, it was interesting talking to James. Just for background, Martin Lewis, if you don't know him, which I'm sure you will, is moneysavingexpert.com. He's found ways to help people through all sorts of things. During the early phases of the cost of living crisis, I have to say that Rees Mogg was business secretary, an energy secretary. You tell me what that guy did to help anybody. He never made a public statement to help any single person, okay? Martin Lewis did more than about 3 government ministers put together. Just tiny things I'm thinking about, little things like, did you know that your thermostat's probably set to 74, and if you turn it down to 60, you're going to save 8% on your energy bills? Why isn't Rees Mogg saying that? Why is Martin Lewis telling me that, okay?
I don't think Jacob Rees-Mogg has ever touched his own thermostat.
I agree. Obviously, I don't think
know what I mean.
And I know in that, and that's a euphemism as well, okay? He just hasn't touched his own thermostat, okay? And we're going to do the Rees Moggs next week, by the way.
Yeah, we are. Sorry, everyone. Just warning now, if you want to take a week off.
Because they're doing a reality show. Okay, but everything, as I was talking to James Cannagher about this, he's saying, everything that Martin Lewis has done in his career so far, it has been cost-free. He offers a sort of public good. He's done really good things for people. He's tried to help. But in a way that he has not been tested. So whereas Clarkson has been tested, he's been through these various files, as I said, and although he's not, it's not machine politics, he nonetheless has been tested like a politician, and a lot of his negatives are already baked in. We don't know Martin Lewis's negatives, and by the way, there are them, because there are with every single human being in the world, and I'm a big fan of Martin.
He's recognised by 96% of people in the country, Martin Lewis. Do you know what percentage of people who know him have a negative view of him?
Tell me.
4%.
Oh my God.
That's pretty good going, isn't it?
Yeah, but you have to take positions as a politician, and and a lot more than you've got to. We don't know what the negatives would be, and by the way, we also don't know if Martin would want to do this either. So
exactly. Well, see, you would have 2 very different types of prime minister there. Clarkson would be very much more the sort of Trumpian, make grand gestures, say grand things, disrupt, and then hope people can tidy up after you. Martin Lewis would be far more of a sort of European Union technocrat, like someone who comes in and just said, should we just get the economy running right? Should we just make everybody 1% richer and better off without coming coming in with and he is always assiduously is that right?
Yeah.
He's always assiduously avoided taking a political stance on anything if you could avoid it. There are ways and means of taking that into politics. You can have that as your narrative, which is I am not taking a political stance here. I'm going to come in and I'm going to try and make the country better off. And that's an interesting way to go about it. And he is someone who people would trust to do that. But if you do come from being a celebrity and you do say, look, I'm coming from a different world, I will make mistakes. I am going to mess things up. I am going to, say things you don't like. And then, the next day I'll read something else and I'll have to change my mind. They are unhindered by the collective responsibility of being in the Labour Party or the Tory Party or one of the big political parties where you have to toe the party line all the time. If you can come in as a Clarkson or a Martin Lewis and just be yourself and say the things that you want to say and own your mistakes, then actually you have all these advantages that a modern day politician doesn't have. If Martin Lewis and Jeremy Clarkson ran against each other, I might get our lovely friends at More in Common to ask their people who would win in a general election.
Polling this podcast.
Yeah, they've done for our Royal Albert Hall show that More in Common have done Britain's favourite Christmas song and Christmas film, and then they've done it by political affiliation as well, which we'll do on the podcast after the live show. I'm going to get More in Common to ask whether who would win in a general election between Martin Lewis and Jeremy Clarkson.
Well, it would be Clarkson, I can tell you.
Rory, 1 second. 60%. Would you like £100,000 bet on that?
I can tell you
I think it would be Martin Lewis.
No, because you'd be tested by the campaign. And what would happen when you said to Martin Lewis, by the way, immigration is the number one issue for most people in this country. Take a position on that now, please. And that you can't be a European technocrat about that. You just can't. You're going to have to say something.
But then if I said
he hasn't made any of the choices, and we already know about Clarkson's choices. They're all baked in.
But he's a Remainer though, Clarkson.
But it's all vibes, Richard. That's why that's the dream. Because Clarkson campaigned with Cameron for Remain, is 100% Remainer, and at least 3 out of 5, maybe even more now because it's constantly changing, believe he voted for Brexit. Okay, so he's got like the dream vibes, where you've got all these.
But that's why Clarkson versus Martin Lewis is the ultimate vibes versus facts election.
Well, it might be vibes versus vibes. We have to see what Martin Lewis's positions on all sorts of things were. But we know what Clarkson's might be, and it would be out there.
Yeah, we'll have to see what Martin Lewis is going to offer us. But I do think, that he's enormously popular, he's enormously well known. Other names in that top 10, by the way, Claudia Winkleman is there.
Oh.
Wouldn't be interested. Mary Berry's there. Wouldn't be interested. She wouldn't be interested.
Yeah, I can officially confirm Claudia would not be interested in that.
Another person very, very high up the list, David Tennant. He's very high up the list, like 13th most popular celebrity in Britain.
Has he ever played a Prime Minister? He's played everything, so I'm surprised he hasn't played a Prime Minister.
No, I think he hasn't only because of Rory Kinnear, because I think legally Rory Kinnear always has to play the Prime Minister these days. Richard Madeley is 230.
Well, that would be a wild ride.
Richard Madeley is 234th on the list.
Oh, I thought you were saying he was in the top 10. I was about to say, what?
Carol Vorderman, 68th. But
no, that's not gonna work.
There are very few people in that list you think would want a political career. Martin Lewis and Jeremy Clarkson are about the only two. Jeremy Clarkson, by the way, on Britain's most popular celebrities, is 18th, 2 places behind James May. That's an election I'd like to see. May versus Hammond versus Clarkson. I'm surprised Andy Willman hasn't tried that, one of them becoming PM. So I do think we will have a celebrity prime minister in the next 20 years because I think the route is now available to do it, because I don't think you have to go via the Labour Party or Tory Party. And also, if you wanted to go via those two, I think you probably could. But you do have to have an incredible heartland appeal. I don't think you're going to get a firebrand from the right or a firebrand from the left sort of suddenly winning over the whole of Britain. I think you have to have someone. Clarkson has a heartland appeal across a number of demographics. Martin Lewis has a heartland appeal across a lot of demographics. But I will say this. It would be a really, really bad idea to have a celebrity as a prime minister. If a celebrity wants to give up being a celebrity and work in politics and look after people for the next 20 years, then have a little think about them being a prime minister. But I think if they just want to go, well, people like me and running the country doesn't look that hard, those are not the people you want as your prime minister. They're really, really not. And however much we denigrate politicians in this country, the good ones are so good. And they got into it because they love their country and because they want to help people. And those are the people you want to find, and those are the people you want to truffle out, and not just go, oh, I like this person. He seems to talk common sense. You can talk common sense when you don't have to do anything. You really can. When there are no consequences to everything you say, you can talk common sense. The first day you sit down at your desk and see actual real people with real problems and how hard it is and how nuanced running a country is, you think, just give me someone who's shown they care and shown they love the country and shown they love looking after people, and don't vote for a celebrity.
I endorse this message.
So, yeah, Clarkson versus Martin Lewis. We will give you the results of that as and when we have them. This episode is brought to you by Sky, where you can watch unmissable shows, including the thrilling new Sky original series, The Day of the Jackal, starring Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne and BAFTA Award winner Lashana Lynch.
She is terrific. It's based on Frederick Forsyth's acclaimed novel, The Day of the Jackal. The series is a contemporary reimagining of the classic thriller that sees an unrivaled lone assassin, the Jackal,
It's his day.
take on one last job, putting his secret life in extreme jeopardy. He's under relentless global pursuit from secret agent Bianca. The hunter has become the hunted.
Oh, man, I hate it when that happens. It's one of my absolute favourite books, The Day of the Jackal. It is brilliant, and I can't wait to see these two do it as well. The book itself, and you can see from the trailer as well, is taut, it's propulsive, it's got everything you'd want in a great thriller.
That's right. Lashana Lynch, who, by the way, is superb in every single thing she does, plays a British intelligence officer, again, who won't stop until she has taken the Jackal down.
Eddie Redmayne plays the elusive assassin, the Jackal. Can't be that elusive if I know that Eddie Redmayne is playing him. I could work out where Eddie Redmayne is if I had to.
It's less of a good movie, though, is it? Just you sitting there with your phone trying to work out where Eddie Redmayne is.
Yeah.
It's done.
He's in Soho. But it's a real belter, and these two, I think, are going to do it justice.
Espionage, subterfuge, violence, they will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. Watch the new Sky original series, The Day of the Jackal, on Sky now.
Jaguar released a new advert this week, and it's got more publicity than most new adverts got, Marina.
I know we did Christmas ads last week, so not to turn us into the rest of advertising, but Jaguar have to do something, can I just say, before they are being outsold by their stablemate owned by Tata Motors, but Land Rover by something like 6-1, right? And they're going full electric, and they've got some new, very, very expensive concept cars coming. So they have to do something, okay? They have to rebrand. Anyway, what they have done is release an ad. The car they're going to unveil at some Miami art fair.
Miami Art Fair,
Yeah.
where all the cars are
Yeah, that's
unveiled.
all right. I would definitely do it.
That's where I remember the first Ford Cortina.
Yeah.
I think, wasn't it? Was
Absolutely,
it the
on a big pedestal,
yeah.
next to a Basquiat.
It was at the Hot Springs Surrealism Festival.
Yeah. So they released an advert, and if you haven't seen it, it has been setting the internet on fire, and not in a good way.
Can you set the internet on fire in a good way?
I don't know. I mean, setting it on fire permanently would be good.
That is good, actually.
But
yes.
yeah, no one's found a way how to do that. Yeah. Anyway, and I want to say that a lift arrives on a sort of pink planet. Out of it emerge several people some of whom are sort of, I suppose, sort of deliberately looking non-binary. Some of them, they're all wearing bright pink clothes, yellow. Someone's got a mallet. They're going to smash some things. There are no cars. There are no cars, and they've changed the logo of the sort of the famous growler. They call it the leaping Jaguar.
The famous growler.
The famous growler.
Is that
I
what they
know.
call it?
Every time I've written these ad men talking all week about growlers, I've just found it absolutely hilarious.
Okay.
But you have to just no one said it. Okay, well now at least we've broken.
I mean, with respect to all advertisers, that's a rebrand. Let's call it the famous growler.
The famous growler, yeah. And they've changed the logo and blah blah blah. And there's a tiny teaser image of their new concept car, which does sort of look from the corner of it quite extraordinary and amazing in that way that, the Tesla truck looks like a child's sort of drawing of a futuristic car.
Yes.
It's got that sort of slight feel.
Yeah.
We've only seen the sort of back rear end of it, as it were. Again, sorry, but that's the reality.
All we've seen thus far, well, we haven't seen the famous growler, but
It's left rear end.
We have seen the left rear end. Have we seen the exhaust pipe?
As I say, they do have to do something because they're
in
all
trouble.
cars are currently off sale. They're in trouble, and they say that they're going full electric, and that the car's going to cost more than £100,000, and they're only going to hold on to 15% of their current customer base.
Yeah.
Whew. Well, I mean, are they going to hold on to 15%? The trouble with this advert is, I know that people will say, oh, it's some people will say, I think it's great, it's brave, it's this. It's not brave and original. It just looks like a load of stuff. It could be an advert for, I don't know, Debenhams 5 years ago. It doesn't make any, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't look kind of creative and thrilling and what have you.
They've said but it should encapsulate fearless creativity.
Yeah, they want a fire break. They want a renaissance. It's like the old world is dead and the new one is coming. It's like, you still have to have customers, right? And you know that your primary business, sorry, car company, is selling cars,
Yeah,
right?
that is their
And
primary
so-
business.
And I have to say, it's all these things take ages to do. And this campaign will have been percolating for like, I don't know, I don't want to say a year, maybe less than a year, but at least, a long time. And the trouble is, it just feels late. It feels like that era of a sort of woke capitalism. We've reached the high watermark of it. That thing where people felt like all brands, I am a Shropshire-based cement firm. I must put something on our socials about Black Lives Matter. It's like, you really don't need to. It is, as we've said before in this,
Yes,
podcast,
the key is
it's fine not to post.
Don't put anything racist on. That's the thing to do.
If you don't do that, then it's really, you don't have to have a view about this. And you actually saw it, this whole thing, this idea of brands having to be people in this very sort of correct people. You saw it also in the wake of the Queen's death, where you got all these like yoga leggings companies having to sort of tweet with black borders, and Centre Parks telling everyone to stay in their lodges and not come out on the day of the funeral. And you just thought, this is so mad. The tills in Morrison's being put on a low beat.
Half-mast. Yeah, they are low beat.
Yeah, they were. Because it was just the noise was regarded as disrespectful. It's like, companies. You don't have to do any of the stuff.
I was in Poundland. The Poundland have now got their Christmas tills.
Yeah.
And every time you buy something, it goes, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. And you think it's annoying. But there's people working there. And literally every single person who buys anything goes, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. I think it's torture.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that's torture to the people who work there.
It's the same as Guantanamo Bay, but with like a couple of differences.
Yeah, it's like a Poundland Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
Can I put the counter view on this?
Yeah.
So Jeremy McGovern is the chief creative officer who does the branding for Jaguar Land Rover. So he's done all the Land Rover branding, which has been unbelievably good and unbelievably profitable. So he absolutely knows his business. And a lot of people are going, but you're showing us clientele who wouldn't be able to afford your cars. You're not showing us any cars. All this stuff. Now, William Lyons, who invented Jaguar, his absolute key line was a copy of nothing.
Yeah.
A copy of nothing, which is a great line. And they keep this copy nothing here, which I think is a very, very strong thing to have. And they don't show a car. But are you aware of this thing? Are you aware of this thing, the Ehrenberg-Bass rule?
No,
which is
tell me.
so Ehrenberg Bass Institute is in University of South Australia, and it's the absolute sort of, they're the gurus for all marketers everywhere in the world, and they were the ones that came up with this the 95-5 rule, which absolutely has kind of ruled advertising for the last 5 years or so. It's called the long of it and the short of it. The 95-5 rule says if you are selling a car, so if you're Jaguar, right, and you're selling a car, only 5% of the people who might buy your car at any given time are going to buy it, because most people bought their car 6 months ago or a year ago or 2 years ago, so then they're not in the market. 95% of people are not in the market for your car at the moment your advert drops. 5% of people are. So they said, stop spending your money trying to attract that 5%. Okay, stop that, the people who are buying tomorrow, and actually what you want to do is build a brand for the other 95%, so that when they are ready to buy a car, they remember you first. Okay, so the key thing is this: you absolutely build a brand, you build something unusual, you build something that says copy nothing, you build something that says, oh, this is very different, and the car that they're bringing out is going to be very different as well. And when 95% of your customers who are currently not going to buy your car at all, not even in the market for something, they will remember your brand. They will remember that it said something to you that other brands hadn't done, and they will start looking to the specifics of your brand. And that's when you start bringing out the short of it, which is here are the specifics of our car. Here's a picture of our car. Here's it driving up an Alpine pass. And so this 595 or 95-5 rule, which I think is completely counterintuitive, but makes absolute sense, which is almost everyone you're advertising to is not going to buy your car in the next 2 weeks, but almost everyone who will buy your car will do it in 6 months, a year, 18 months time. So don't show a picture of your car driving up an Alpine road now. If you need to turn a brand around, you just need to do something.
Well, I don't think the way that they've done it is going to do that at all. And I actually have to say, and I think that, okay, let's talk about another advertising guru, David Ogilvy, and he goes further back, and he's a big presence in Mad Men. He's clearly part of the inspiration for Don Draper, who's a sort of legendary ad man, and he and in fact, his sort of quotations are sprinkled throughout Mad Men. He's a fascinating guy. And if you ever want to read his books on advertising, I mean, this is a guy who thinks a lot about the Roman Empire, let's put it that way,
Right.
and the ancient Greeks and whatever. But he is very, very clear that advertising is persuading people to buy stuff, okay? You work for a retailer. And people, when they're talking about cleverness and creativity with your ad, those are more of the terms
Yeah.
of his days. Now they will talk about bravery. That's a new one. Or it's got people talking. Okay. He would say this is just absolute bullshit. This is for people who could bamboozle their clients into not holding them responsible for sales, right?
Yeah.
And so I am sure that this Jaguar, it has got people talk, all these sort of things. It is possible. Lots of advertising is bad and
Yes.
actively harms products. Okay. And it's the idea, Ogilvy would be like, the idea that, all advertising is good and just by having someone paying for it, you're doing something great for your product it's not at all true. And it never has been. And just because he's from a long time ago, David Ogilvy, the techniques of sales remain the same. And one of his favorite copywriters once said, I've seen an advert for basically the same product made by different brands in the same magazine, in the same publication as it was at the time, same basic style, layout, everything. And one of them sold 19 and a half times, not twice the much as the other, 19 and a half times as much as the other. And so what it is, it's the difference between one had the right appeal and one had the wrong appeal. And it's one of those really basic things when you hear it, you think, yeah, no, that's just too simple. But it is quite simple. If you're saying to me that this particular Jaguar rebrand is going to sell lots of 100,000, which is its job, is to sell in 2026 when they come into the market, lots of 100,000 plus vehicles.
Yeah.
I will love to see it. We'll wait and see. I think the car itself, the product itself, which I think, someone like Ogilvy would study forever the kind of all the kind of specs of these vehicles or whatever he was advertising and think, oh, that's really interesting. This car is, I don't know, like that Volvo advert recently saying it's so safe. It's like the safest cars in the world. And they had they had a story in a Volvo advert recently about a family who are going to have a baby, right? So would study the specs and would study the things and think that is how we sell it on the product, but I have to find the right appeal. And this, in my view, has failed to do it. But there are many, everybody makes these. I mean, Coke made a mistake. Coke had the worst rebrands talking about Coke, new Coke.
Yeah.
They decided to change the recipe of Coke and everyone hated it. It was huge it was an absolute outcry over it. In the end, I think Pepsi did an advert in which there's a little girl saying, tell me why Coke did it, when your rival is actually naming you in a brand, in an advert. And then they went back to the old recipe.
I have a thing where everyone is saying that something's wrong. A bit of me thinks, hold on a minute, especially when someone like Jerry McGovern has been very successful otherwise. And I get what you're saying about David Ogilvy 100%, but they're not selling Mars bars. They are selling an incredibly expensive car of which they don't have to sell very many. Is the truth. That's the business they're trying to get in now, is the ultra high luxury. We don't have to sell very many of these. I mean, listen, instead of having car showrooms, they're going to be having like kind of art installations where, there's cordon bleu food alongside the cars and what have you. It all depends on this car, which is going to be unveiled at the Miami Art Fair. If that is an amazing car, if it does something extraordinary, and if copy nothing, genuinely you look at it and go, okay, I see what you mean, then it could absolutely be a masterstroke, because suddenly you're positioning yourself somewhere where nobody else is. And, you're not having to sell 5,000 of these a day. You're having to sell a small amount and be this brand that stands apart from everyone else. It could be a huge mistake. It feels like a mistake because it feels old-fashioned. It feels like an advert. It
feels old-fashioned. It feels an advert from 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like it's trying to be futuristic and actually it's old-fashioned. But maybe they know the market better than us, and maybe there's a very small amount of people who are going to be able to buy this car. Maybe they know who those people are, and maybe they've done their homework. It's a funnier story if they haven't done their homework, for sure. But if they have done their homework, then maybe it'll be a masterstroke, and in 5 years we'll be saying, it's amazing that everyone drives Jaguars
Well,
now.
yeah, I mean, and rebrands can... I was trying to think when I knew we were going to talk about this, I was thinking, I've realised what the greatest rebrand that everyone thinks is a terrible rebrand of the last few years is, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
Twitter to X, okay? This guy, I'm sorry, I've realised that I've been completely wrong about this. This guy has bought something for 44 billion, okay? He may have halved its value. Maybe it's worth 22 billion. Okay, 22 billion to someone who has defence contracts. cuckoo, important, is nothing, right? He has, and it's what I find so interesting about it is that look what he's got out of it. Look what Elon Musk has got out of it. He's basically the deputy president. He's got such important relations with China that he needs to keep going. He's got huge amounts of influence over that. It's not even close. He couldn't have done any of that from SpaceX and Tesla. He couldn't have become the person who he is now in terms of Trump and the upcoming administration. He couldn't have done any of that. The rebrand from Twitter to X could turn out to be one of the great business moves in history.
The greatest bargain in history.
Yeah. But even though, like, at the same time, he has, taken more value off a company than sort of anyone in modern commercial history, but in a speed of time and the proportion of the value.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because look what he's got out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And also, most of that money wasn't his.
Yeah.
So it's kind of there's it's annoying but true. But listen, maybe Jaguar. Funnily enough, Elon Musk retweeted the Jaguar advert and said, "Don't you sell cars?" And you think, oh, listen, I kind of get it. But as Elon Musk knows, sometimes you're in a different game.
It's funny because the bit that we've seen of the car, as I said earlier, is the thing that it looks most like is that it just doesn't look like this kind of normal lines and sort of contours of a car. It looks much more like a sort of stylized version of a car in the way that Tesla truck does. So we'll have to see where. And again, obviously, it's an electric vehicle, so. There's potentially not a million miles between the products, but obviously between the approaches there is a million miles.
It is. I do think though, if you're sitting there thinking, but it's Jaguars, and you're just thinking of the Sweeney, and you think of that Jaguar disappeared a really, really long time ago. That business disappeared a long time. It's not like a great British business that makes cars for John Thor. It is in a very, very different space. It's a very, very different business, very, very different industry, and we like to think of the past of Jaguar, but the people who work there really have to think about the future of Jaguar. Well, listen, who knows? We'll find out.
It's a
at
big
some
swing.
point.
We'll keep checking in on it.
It is a hell of a big swing. I will say that. And I have to put the counterpoint to these things. So I'm not saying what I'm saying is right. I'm just saying, who knows?
Well, my Twitter greatest rebrand in history. This is the counterpoint, but I reckon. Well, let's wait and see. Yeah. Now, Richard, please talk to me about quizzes.
Yeah, so quizzes are sort of, the last remaining workhorses of terrestrial television. They're the things really keeping it afloat, apart from your Strictly's and I'm a Celebs, these sort of big tentpole things. In a world where almost every smaller show has gone under.
In a world.
On Monday, just to give you ratings sort of standard bearer, Channel 4 got 700,000 was the highest rating on Channel 4 on Monday, right?
In prime time.
Yeah, across the whole day. The following shows all got over 2 million. Pointless, University Challenge, Only Connect, Mastermind, House of Games, The Chase. That's 6 quizzes, all of them getting over 2 million, which is about 3 times the maximum thing on Channel 4. And often, by the way, on BBC 2, anything outside of quizzes on BBC 2 also, that's the sort of ratings they're getting. So ratings going down and down and down. And you've got these shows which are getting really good ratings. They're getting very high audience appreciation index. People like to watch them. They're not sort of just kind of sitting there and, chewing gum for the eyes. That's a great Father Ted joke where Father Dougal is watching TV and Ted goes, chewing gum for the eyes, and Dougal goes, no thanks, Ted. So these shows are getting good ratings. They are also unbelievably cheap in the context of how television works. So an episode of I'm a Celeb, something like that, it's £1 million an episode. Yeah. Something like even The Wheel would be £400,000 or £500,000 an episode.
The same.
Yeah, exactly. Huge, 7 figures per episode for all of these things at least. Something like Pointless, a House of Games, Only Connect, University Challenge, 50 grand an episode probably. So you can do 20 episodes of that for the price of another primetime show. So you're getting these incredibly cheap shows which are getting incredibly good ratings.
They're rating like the soaps. That's wild to me. I mean, because the story of the soaps, which we will definitely talk about in the future, but the soaps used to be by far and away the biggest things on British TV, and I'm talking about EastEnders and Coronation Street, which was and Emmerdale was behind. Now they're all sort of on parity, but they're rating The quiz shows.
There are weeks in which Only Connect outrates EastEnders.
That is extraordinary.
Which is, extraordinary. And also a show like Only Connect. A show, most of these quiz shows, in fact, they are idiosyncratic. They have not been made by committee. They're not, they're very unusual shows that people come to, feel very loyal to. And it feels like a very unusual flavour. And you get a very, very, very loyal audience who love to watch a quiz show. If you've got a daily quiz show as well, people just love it. The Chase has been, just for ITV, has been such an extraordinary hit over the years, and now plays in prime time for bigger ratings, but has just been enormous. And Pointless have been on for 15 years now for the BBC, and just absolutely delivers these solid numbers in a world where nothing delivers solid numbers, where everything is falling away. So what happens? We know that terrestrial TV is on its way out, and they rely more and more on these quizzes, the shows that people love. And the thing has always been, these shows are working great for terrestrial because they have a slightly older audience profile than some other shows. But that is changing. And suddenly a lot more people are watching these shows on streaming. So House of Games gets 500,000 every day on catch-up. Only Connect 500,000 every day on catch-up. People are working out, an older demographic is working out they can watch things not necessarily on terrestrial TV.
It's aside from the one in the schedule, to make it really clear, that's aside from the one that's in the schedule.
Yeah.
These are just old episodes that people are...
Or watching later on time delayed or something like that, but not just switching TV on and watching it, which traditionally how a quiz audience would watch it. So quiz show producers, if you're a great quiz show producer, and we have many in this country, Tamara Gilder, Hugh Rycroft, Tom Blakes and Glenn Hugill, people like that, who are making these quizzes, not making an enormous amount of money off them. So if you're making Pointless, you make good money because it's on for 15 years. It just keeps going. If you make The Chase, you make good money, but not enormous amounts of money. You're not making £1 million an episode and making your money off that. Those people are starting to say, I don't understand why we're still doing this for a terrestrial audience, because I'm looking at two figures here, which is the cost per episode, which is very, very low. Yeah. And there are 2 million people who want to watch this every day. And the one thing that new media has told us is if there are 2 million people who want to watch the thing that you're doing every day, you can make a huge amount of money out of that. And that is not currently what they're making out of terrestrial TV. And the one thing that stopped them is, yes, but our audience doesn't understand how to access that. But Pointless started 15 years ago, and it now has an audience who do understand new media and do understand they can go on YouTube and do understand how they can go on streaming. So I think that these beautiful little gems in the schedule, which we're kind of going, at least we've still got those. At least this is a thing. At least we can rely on good old-fashioned quiz shows with their sort of slightly older demographic. I think people are starting to see this might be the new Wild West, might be the new gold rush. There might be a huge... No one has quite...
What do you think will happen?
Well, I think
people
that...
will obviously remove them from the terrestrial broadcasters and put them where?
All of those legacy shows, I suspect, will stay where they are.
Okay.
Right, because why wouldn't you?
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, they belong to the channels quite, and they've been backed by the channels forever and ever. But if you were coming up with a new one, if you had a simple new concept which you could do online and which was very interactive with people, and you had talent who would happily go with you, then you make your own. Make your own and get paid directly by advertisers. You put it on YouTube. You can put it on, you can have it on Insta. You can have it on TikTok. All of those places. There's all sorts of little formats that work for younger people or younger demographic on the streamers. And quizzes is the next big gold rush, I think. These things which are seen as, these kind of, they've always been these sort of steady, dependable things. But as I say, as all the other ratings go down and down and down, you start looking at these things again, you're still getting 2 million people every single day. Every single day you're getting 2 million people looking at this and enjoying it, which is an immensely valuable for the BBC and for ITV, not for Channel 4 because they don't have any hit quizzes, which is insane. But listen, I'm sure that's a different discussion. But at some point you have to go, okay, that's worth an awful lot of money. And the first person to crack quizzes, kind of an online version of a quiz, a streaming version of a quiz, that's where they're all going to go, I think. So in one way, I want to say this as a celebration for what these shows do, which is crazy and mental, but also just to say that I suspect that it's an underdeveloped area. Because something like if you're Netflix, it's hard to do because you don't have scheduled things. Quizzes sort of work being scheduled in the same way. You wake up.
I'm pretty sure Netflix will have will spend a lot of money on scheduled quizzes sooner or later.
Well, yeah,
We know they will.
They eventually come round.
Yes.
But, quizzes can be habits. We play Wordle. New York
Yeah.
Times, huge amounts of their revenue come from the
Oh
fact
my
that
God,
they...
that was the biggest buy ever. That was the best
yeah.
buy ever. What did they pay that guy? Like $1 million or something?
And everyone thought it was crazy. And you think, no, it's but it isn't, because people like it. People like... In the same way we talked about Professor Alan Finlayson talking about you have to understand that people are intelligent and are looking for interesting things and are looking to be engaged. Quizzes do that, and no one has yet done the thing where they say, do you know what, I'm not going to take this quiz to the BBC. I'm not going to take this quiz to ITV. I'm actually going straight to a brand. I'm actually going straight to one of the streamers. I'm going to do this thing, which is an appointment to view each day where you tune in at whatever time.
That appointment thing I think is very interesting, because it is so much part of the warp and weft to people's actual day that they think, I'm actually going to finish work and I'm going to sit down and watch a quiz. That's what I always do, and that marks the start of the evening, or that marks, in the same way, that's the hook. That's the thing that brings them back every day, is because it's part of their timetable.
Yeah, exactly.
And that form of appointment to view is very interesting, and particularly with quizzes. I mean, actually, it slightly reminded me of, you remember about 20 years ago when suddenly they had lots of the terrestrial channels looked at what they had in the morning, things like Bargain Hunt, and were like, this is sort of massive. People really like it. It's kind of cult. And it just, the morning schedule kind of became the prime time schedule. And that's what happened with a lot of these quizzes in some ways, is that they started out as a sort of, I'm using the sarcastic air quotes because look how important they are, niche kind of tea time thing.
Yeah.
And suddenly they are wall to wall, and they've got celebrity versions on Saturday night, and they're huge. You're right. I mean, I can see... You've just given a lot of people lots of ideas.
Well, listen, it's a numbers game, and back in the day when you could get 10 million for things, a show that was getting you 2 million, you'd be like, nah. But now that everything's getting 700,000, and these shows are still getting 2 million, you suddenly go, what, 2 million?
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of people. And I think we have to praise these things sometimes. I think we have to praise the amount of people who love quizzes, who love stretching their minds, and the producers who make them. And they're not easy to make. You have to make something that people feel compelled to watch and join in with. But if you can do that, then why not make it for people just personally?
I know you have 450 jobs, but do you sometimes find yourself, because you can't help yourself, I bet you can't help yourself doing this, thinking, how would I make that? How would I make a quiz work on TikTok? Of
course. There's been lots of things like HQ Trivia that come out, and you kind of play on your phones and things like that. But people who I think probably launched those things earlier than they might have done. So people have tried to do it. I think it's going to be launched with a little bit of money behind it, and with talent behind it, and with schedule behind it. I think that's how it will be. But people have tried it, and people love it. But you just need one of them just to crystallize, and everyone go, oh, that's the thing we like. And then suddenly there's 20 or 30 of them. Every producer is thinking that now.
Yeah.
Whenever I talk to producers about quiz, and 5 years ago they'd all be saying, oh yeah, we've got a pilot for BBC, or we've got a pilot, we're doing Channel 4 have got an open thing for commissions, quiz commissions, and now none of them are. They're all saying, I talked to a couple of people this week about how much money Would I Lie to You, which I know is slightly different, Would I Lie to You and House of Games are making on YouTube. Right, because things that are clippable, and they're making a fortune, so you're able to monetize the archive. But it's a very short step from working out how much money you're making from that to going, well, why don't we just cut out the middleman and make something that we can do 500 episodes of that can run forever, that we're monetizing instantly in a way that the channels can't do.
Is in almost the last hurdle of it is the talent, because in that same way that talent had to be persuaded kind of last that streaming was a great idea, and you'd say to them, yeah, well, we have to pay you more money up front because you're not going to have, I don't know, in terms of movies like theatrical release, whatever it is. But once they went over, they thought, oh, I see, yeah, this works, and they liked it. Is it almost like all the producers are already there, and all the the money people are there? You just have to say to someone, would you do a quiz on YouTube? And by the way, this is not slumming it.
Yeah, and so the agents are going, no, we want the prestige stuff. I'm not going to take my client to that. But all talent now understands with podcasts and with YouTube channels that they understand that they missed a boat, and that a lot of the younger generation are really, really monetizing what they do to an incredible degree. So actually, the second you say now to any of them, would you like to do a TikTok series or a YouTube series? They go, yeah. And you go, oh, you won't get paid, but you'll get paid for the advertising. They go, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. So all the barriers are gone. all the barriers are gone, and it's just a race to see which is the first one that absolutely goes over the top, and suddenly you realise, oh, so quiz was a multi-billion-pound industry all along, which, I think it probably is. But the ones that are on now are sticking around because they do great jobs for the channel. So House of Games that I make, the BBC, they are so brilliant with it, and the team is so brilliant. And that show, I'll keep making that for as long as terrestrial TV goes on. All those shows, The Chase, Mastermind, Only Connect, they are all sticking around. But I do think there's going to be this new generation of quiz, which is going to make some of these people who are now absolutely slogging their guts out trying to eke out the last bits of terrestrial TV, and it's going to make some of them an awful lot of money.
Well, listen, that is about us, I think,
Yeah.
for today. But we will be back on Thursday for the questions and answers episode. Please do send them in to therestosentertainment@gmail.com.
God, we covered a lot there, didn't we?
We did.
And so next week I'm going to find the polling of who would win in a general election between Jeremy Clarkson and Martin Lewis. Is that clickbait?
I know who will win in the polling, but in the actual general election, I know who will win, and it's a different answer.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, then you
Well,
win
I want to say it
each way.
now so that when Martin Lewis
When it
comes out on
happens.
top, I'm going to be able to say to you, yeah, he's not going to win in the general election.
I mean, that feels like moving the goalposts. Why don't you run?
What? We would be a failed state within 6 months, and also I wouldn't win.
See you on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.